them, but I am sorry, I have no space to retreat, and I don't have the luxury of surrendering. I am marching forward because we want to transform this nation.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, quite some interesting developments these past couple of days. Francis, you were there at that State House event, let me call it that, and the president coming out in ways that we haven't seen him do about this issue with his deputy, essentially saying, hey, kama umechoka, toka uende. And the deputy president, of course, saying, he's a man on a mission.
Yeah, and yet another demonstration of the, what I would say, untidy relationship between the president and his deputy in the second term. During that interview, I felt like the president was saying something that he has probably restrained himself from saying in the last, let's say, couple of months, if not years, since 2018. And if there was any doubt that the relationship is broken down, that interview was yet another confirmation that it's no longer rosy as it was in the first time between 2013 and 2017. What I saw that day, the president basically trying to speak from the heart. And it doesn't look very neat. Bearing in mind that the president and his deputy are the first implementers of the constitutional provision on a shared, on the presidency, you know, where you have the president and the deputy elected together as a pair, you know, presidential candidate and running mate.
Same ticket, yes.
Same ticket. And tied at the hip, basically. It is not possible for the president to sack his deputy. The only way they can disengage is if one resigns. And that's probably the reason why he was making that call. But when the deputy says he's not going to resign, he's a man on a mission, now without any luxury of surrendering, I thought it was a response to, I am not resigning. So we are here together, we will square it out to the very end. So then basically the sum total of it is what one would say, tuko kwa nyumba, tutakanyagana hapa hapa mpaka mwisho.
Linus, would you see this as a turning point in this relationship? I mean, we've had a Cold War basically going on, but this week we actually saw what we in the media like to call bare knuckles.
You know, it used to be a sort of guerrilla warfare where the fighters are not visible. They are out there in the bushes and all that. But for the first time, it has become a nearly public exchange. I say nearly because the remarks that were made by President Uhuru Kenyatta in the interview and those that were made in response by the Deputy President William Ruto were made at different places. I think we are so close to such an ugly situation where there will be a public kind of exchange between the two. So we're calling it a turning point. It could be a turning point. What makes things worse right now is the fact that we have a year to the election. So the DP side is also becoming emboldened and saying, you know, we have an election in a year's time. We're just buying time, so taking the fight to the president. And looking at the speech, or rather interview that Francis and our media colleagues conducted at the State House the other day, you could see the president really eager to come out, but still holding back. There was a lot of restraint in what he's trying to say, because even the word "step aside" was almost lost in the sentence.
Yeah,
it came,
and he didn't even mention him by name.
Yes, it sounded like a slip-up. So there's still that restraint, and I think this must be a recognition on his part that this is not neat in the eyes of the public. This is not good political optics for him and his deputy to be in that kind of exchange. But as to the state of the relations, there is no more confirmation of how bad things are. Things are bad.
Joe, something Lina said about the neatness on lack of neatness in this whole thing that he mentioned when he was talking about how the president spoke. I had been wondering whether the relationship between the president and the vice president is affecting maybe service delivery in public offices. Because, yeah, I know the president has said now he's been able to work better in the second term since the handshake compared to the first one, while the deputy president has said the exact opposite, saying the first term for him felt like they were able to do more work. But I was listening to our breakfast show a few days back, and one of the panelists, CAS Beauty Salachi, said that even in government offices, people are already taking sides. In terms of now, even when someone is given a duty to perform, they'll decide whether they want to do it or not, depending on where the political affiliations for now. There are those who support the president and there are those who support the deputy president. And now, someone may decide not to do their work because of that political affiliation that they have now. And of course, that is going to somehow affect service delivery in some of these government offices because there are programs to finish. There's a lot that needs to be done because despite the politics, work has to continue in these offices, services need to be given. But then now, I keep remembering about 2013 when the president and the vice president were elected.
The deputy president.
The deputy president. I don't know why I keep saying vice. The deputy president were elected as a pair. We keep saying as a pair because that's what was different in the 2010 constitution. The bromance, the friendship, all that we saw. And people had expected maybe this is the digital government that we are going to see. We're having younger leaders than we've ever had before. The former presidents and then vice presidents were older. They thought they would have more time to do projects, to be able to give service to the people. But now when we see this split between them, what does it show those people who overwhelmingly voted for them back then because of that platform of them being young leaders, being able to do more for us? People who are 25 years old in 2013 are now in their 30s. They are no longer as young. So what does this make them feel about the choices they made back then by electing this pair, hoping for more, but now having to witness the relationship as it is now?
But you see, the tragedy, I think, of this really is that, look, I mean, these are people who are, in a sense, starting on a clean slate. I mean, they're the first pair.
The first implementers.
Of this constitution. They were the first pair to come as a ticket, as Francis was mentioning a little bit earlier. And so the question one has to ask is, what sort of precedent then are they setting? Because in next year, we will have a new set, most definitely. I mean, the deputy president could be part of it. If he is, he'll be on top of the ticket. It could still be a completely different pair. But what would happen? I mean, are these people going to follow this Uhuru or template that is so ignominious? I mean, how can you have this as the first impression that we get of what it means to have a president and the deputy elected on the same ticket? I mean, this concern is growing. I saw religious leaders, the NCCK, the Evangelical Alliance, all of them saying, well, wait a minute, this is not looking good. I mean, I'm not too sure. They were talking about reconciliation. I just get a feeling that maybe that point is past, but it really, at the end of the day, is looking bad. And to think that these people are constitutionally tied together, that you cannot decouple the two offices. They have to just stick like that unless someone resigns, like the president was saying, hey, you quit and all of that. But it's up to him. I mean, the president cannot push him out. It would have to be probably a vote of no confidence in parliament and impeachment, which is politically also a very difficult thing to do. And at the same time, the president cannot wake up the way it used to happen. Linus, you remember the famous 1 p.m. news bulletins?
Yes.
And then they would actually say, mabadiliko haya yanaanza kutekelezwa mara moja. So from that very moment, you know, if you are vice president, you actually stop being one. But right now, we really cannot do that. But I wanted us to Francis, before you come in,
yep.
There's a soundbite, a question that I think you particularly asked. What really happened between the two of you? And I would like for us to listen to the president, and then you can come in.
I have no idea what has transpired, except for the fact that probably he is trying to create a base for him and for his future politics, which is his right. I have never denied him that, and he's free to do so. But I feel it is unfortunate that maybe the manner in which he is doing it, by going against the same government that he's serving, I think is wrong. Because like I said, the issues that we have been trying to fight over in this BBI and to try and achieve in this BBI are the same issues that brought me and him together, right? So if I want to now expand that, because I believed and I thought that that is what we were trying to do, and if you go back all the way back to 2013, it was always been my agenda, bringing the people of Kenya together. So if divisions of 2007 brought us together, why can't we now have these other divisions also bringing more on board? What is the problem with that? It doesn't deny you of your chances, because at the end of the day, it is not Uhuru who elects, yeah? It is the people of Kenya. So what is the problem if we have more on board and have a situation where everybody feels that regardless of who wins, no Kenyan has lost, and every Kenyan can leave feeling a winner?
Francis.
I don't think the president does not know what happened. He pretty well probably knows what happened. Because when this question was posed earlier to the deputy president, he said, ask the president, I cannot discuss him. And so when we posed it directly to the president, he says he does not know. I felt there's something that probably he doesn't want to say, or the two know that they don't want to say, and probably will come up at a later stage. But there certainly is something that resulted or triggered the kind of a fallout that we see now. And the challenge, Joe, as you were pointing out earlier, is that being the first team to implement this arrangement of a president and a deputy president elected on the same ticket, is that it sets a bad example, bad precedent for the future occupiers of the office of the president and deputy president. You see, this arrangement was brought in to cure a challenge in the previous administrations where the president used the vice president's office or slot as a carrot to dangle, for political support. And that was seen as bringing some uncertainty in the running of government. So the arrangement now was that it will be a sure ticket for a period of 5 years, unless situations arise and the deputy president or the president, one of them is not there, for purposes as outlined in the Constitution on how a vacancy can be created in the office of the president and the office of the deputy president. It was to bring some sense of order for that 5-year period. But if we see disorder like we are seeing now in terms of the arrangement, then there's a problem. And then secondly, if you're elected together for the first term and it works well, or maybe you unavumiliana in that first relationship, and then you work together to seek re-election for the second term, it is very well possible that the pair can be at war like we see now, because probably you no longer need re-election if you are the incumbent. And if you have a deputy who also has presidential ambitions, then you will see the kind of friction that we see. So maybe in future, those who are aspiring for the presidency, beginning next year, maybe the idea should be get a person that you can work along with for the first term, and you can be assured of an even better working relationship in the second term, barring any friction as a result of political ambitions and competition. Because if you ask me, I think maybe at the heart of this disquiet and this friction is probably political ambition, nothing else.
Linus.
Yes, I'll take it up from where Francis left it, and that is political ambition. The president failed himself in the interview by basically stepping back from the opportunity to explain what is it that is wrong with his relationship with the deputy. The time he came closest to explain where the crust of the problem is was in Bomas of Kenya, when he gave that analogy of a baton
running backwards.
I'm running, and then the deputy wants to take the baton and run in the different direction. Because the one thing that has been clear for the last 9 years is Deputy President William Ruto's ambition to become president. I mean, we speak tonight, and his residents experienced some events today, very, very ugly, you can put it that way, because the General Service Unit personnel were withdrawn and replaced by the APs of course, in a sign of how bad things are getting between the president and his deputy. But we also know that, you know, like the president says, he has actively pursued an agenda that is different from that of the president. Now, we talk of Chapter 9 of the Constitution that brought about this running mate arrangement. The running mate arrangement, when you look at its history, it's borrowed from the United States. And it's an arrangement of civility. It really thrives in those using it being civil with each other. Not everything can be written into the Constitution. And I think the one principle that is unspoken is the running mate, that is the vice presidential candidate, is subordinate to the presidential candidate. It's not written, but it is the arrangement. So one will be president and the other one will be deputy president. And that balance has to be maintained right through to the end of the term of that president. At no point do we see what we've witnessed in Kenya for the last few years, where, you know, you have the deputy president actively campaigning to succeed the sitting president right there, complete with a party lately, UDA. He professes you know, allegiance to that party, though he denies that legally is still leader of Jubilee. This is untidy. What is missing in our politics is that discipline. I don't think what the Chapter 9 was doing was to make the president and the deputy president equal. Not at all. They are still the vice president of old, but with job security. You can't misuse them the same way they were misused in the past. But I don't think the Constitution then allows them to run a separate show, which is what we've seen with Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto, where we have these two almost competing offices of the president and that of the deputy president. When you look at these events that we saw today, they are a direct, in my view, a direct result of the exchange this week. Because it began with, Francis, the interview you had on Monday, and the president said, you know, step aside if you're unhappy. And the next day, I don't know whether we have that bite, Robert, of the deputy president saying he's a man on a mission, basically responding to, let's listen to...
No, it's not there.
We don't have that. But just to paraphrase that, he said that he is...
But I think, Linus, there's a place where he was talking about being humiliated. I think he's also talked about...
It was during the interview with Inoro FM.
His role being taken away by somebody, basically saying what, from where he sits, what has really happened to him as a result of their differences.
Okay, we can listen to that.
Mwenyewe nimewekwa pembeni na mambo mengi ambayo sitaki kuyataja kwa sababu hayana umuhimu kwa sasa. So yale yaliyofanyika juzi katika uwanja wa ndege ni baadhi ya haya mambo ambayo ni kujaribu kunidunisha, kuonekana mimi sina maana, na kuna watu wenye uwezo mkubwa na mambo kama haya, na kujaribu kulete ushindani, nani mkubwa, nani mdogo, mambo ambayo sina haja nazo.
I think in tone and manner, this one is completely different from what we saw this week.
Yes, yeah,
this week was more confident, cocky. I have no
space for
surrender,
I'm a
no
man
retreat.
on a mission.
I'm a man on a mission. It sounded like a dare, you know, I dare you, you know, it's an exchange. And look, Deputy President and Uhuru, President Kenyatta know our environment is being made up of ugly things, ugly power games that are normally expressed in the way we have seen today in Karen. Because basically when you withdraw the General Service Unit and replace them with APs, even though they call it reorganization or of the reassignment, yes, there is a message there, you know, that you know, we can't destabilize you, because if you want to fight, then we fight. So I think when we saw the DP reacting to the president's interview, we should have expected trouble. One time I was speaking to Mzee Kibor, Jackson Kibor, and long-time KANU operative, and he told me, in Kenya, what the presidency means. He said that when the president says you and points at you, that finger contains the instruments of the state. It has the DC, the PC, it has the intelligence, the police, and all that. Of course, he was describing those old times, which I don't think have changed much. We still see those bits and pieces, and we've seen them in Karen that, this is obviously an expression of that authority. So you want to challenge me? Let's see.
Joe, on that expression of authority, the GSUG company has been replaced by the Administration Police Security of Government Buildings Unit.
SGB.
And I think also, it's just to remind also the Deputy President that this residence, the current residence, is now a government building, and that whatever is happening there, tunaona, like all those delegations that go to his home on a daily basis. I don't know why. Today I was thinking of how your landlord comes to your house and says, nataka kuona hii roof yako inakaaje, just to tell you I can still come into this house and look at the roof, it belongs to me. But then Lina speaks about untidiness. We cannot take away the fact that the office of the Deputy President is a constitutional office. And the frustrations that we are starting to see being directed at him are almost unfortunate in terms of now the office that he holds commands a certain respect. But then when I see what happened today, I'm reminded of the events of, I think, September 2017, when the then NASA presidential candidate Raila Odinga complained of his security being withdrawn. And he wasn't the only one. I think Kalonzo Musyoka, who was his running mate, the security was also withdrawn. And also Moses Wetangula was in the same predicament. So this has happened before. Yes, the Deputy President was not withdrawn, but now we talk about the implications of such activities. I don't know why the government eats its own people comes to mind. Because I know in the past, some of the people now who are silent and watching what's going on would have been the first ones to speak out and say, why is this happening? But they are not. And also the issue of timing, Linus, you talked about how on Monday we had the president speaking, the next day the deputy president reacting to it. I don't know why, for some reason, it seems like the BBI ruling was almost 2 weeks ago, looking at what has happened between now and then. And I think there are those who may say, CDP aseme tu resign because of what he's saying. And I think for him, he has seen in the past, he's a good student of politics. I remember there was a time that when Raila Odinga was the prime minister, he was frustrated to some extent, but he stayed put. And I think the deputy president sees this, and even if he does resign, we don't know if he will. Maybe itakuwa huko towards the end, almost before the elections happen, because I think still this office provides him a certain security in terms of him being the deputy president of the Republic of Kenya, an office that is in the constitution, and him being elected a pair with the president. So very interesting to see how things will be.
Joe, hardball being played by, I would say, by both teams. On one hand, I don't think it would be possible to stop the deputy president and his presidential ambitions. In any case, it's not anything new. You can even look back and say during the 2013 campaigns, it is actually the president who propped that very political ambition question, because when he said, yangu kumi na yako kumi, the impression was that his deputy also has presidential ambitions. So there's nothing strange, there's nothing new. Probably it's the timing, probably it's the arrangement. But looking at the events today in Karen, I would say the timing is not good, and the optics are not very rosy. And it would also, if the deputy president wanted, he can milk the political sympathy that comes with it, because he will say, here I am, the victim. But the government, on the other hand, will argue that nothing much changed. But speaking to a few officers from the Deputy President's office, they're saying 31 GSU officers were withdrawn and replaced by 8 AP officers. Obviously, even the numbers tell you a story, if that is the correct position. The numbers also tell you something. You've seen various interpretations of the National Police Service standing orders. One argument that the GSU commandant is in charge of the security of the president and the deputy president, state houses and lodges. The same document, in one section also says that the General Service Unit is in charge of securing the president, state houses and state lodges. So there are all manner of arguments that can be made and interpretations made out of that document. However, the political optics are all too obvious. Because one would ask then, how is it that from 2013 to 2017, up to 2021, up to including today, things were as they were until these changes happened? So there is a political reason for it. And I would think it is meant to provoke, push, and maybe try to extract a reaction from the deputy president.
Interesting, because the new police spokesperson, Bruno Shosho, he has an interesting name. He basically, looked at this and said it's the statement he issued, one-page statement, essentially saying this is a very normal thing, that the deputy president still retains the presidential escort team, the GSU records team that protects the president, the same people who are protecting the deputy president himself, but that his residence is what has been reassigned to administration police officers. But I think the one question that has to be put on the table, find all these technical aspects of this where you clothe it in legalese, that this is what the police standing orders say and all of that. But I think the optics are not lost on anyone. We have a situation here where the president and his deputy are arguing in public, then 2 days later this kind of thing happens. So whether it was something that was due, whether it was normal reassignment, whatever those terminologies might be, but I think that in terms of what makes sense politically right now, I think it will go down as a misstep in that respect, that people will be asking, really it has got to this point. But more importantly, as I finish this, because I want us to take a break, it horrifies me how we mix politics with security in this country, particularly during election time. And I think it's a dangerous thing when you start seeing these kinds of things, because what happens is that I will not be surprised if tomorrow there's some claim, there was an assassination or some plot or some attempt on someone's life or whatever. These sort of things happen. Sometimes it might be real, sometimes it is part of the politics where someone will use this opportunity now to say, oh, as a result of what happened the other day, the deputy president is now exposed in this manner, someone tried to jump over the fence or whatever. And we've seen those kinds of things happen in the country. So I think that when it comes to security, it would really be great for security to just remain at that professional level where the people who are supposed to be given security are given security in the manner that is prescribed by the law, and the politics is played with other things other than this thing that is so politically sensitive. It's a hot button that can basically trigger things that we may not even want to think about in this country. So that, for me, is what worries me the most about the development that we are seeing, that no matter who is right in this, it just looks bad that suddenly now we're discussing security and politics in the same breath.
Unfortunately, yes, because, Joe, security is also a power issue. When people say we want to take power, we want to be in power, part of that power includes state security. And it comes in numbers, the number of officers assigned to protect you, your home, and everything else, and also the caliber. I mean, even the very optics, GSU officers taken away, replaced by administration police officers, one would see a demotion of sorts, and it's an optics thing. The numbers, the caliber. You remember even in the past, as Jamila was alluding, when the former Prime Minister's security team was reduced, the numbers were reduced and a few officers taken away, it was an issue. And every so often when, let's say, members of parliament are in disagreement with the government, the first thing that the government does is to withdraw security. You remember this in the first term, some of ODM members of parliament, their security was withdrawn when they were seen to disrespect the president in parliament and to speak, badly, quote unquote, about the government. Even now, some of the MPs, especially those who are allied to the deputy president, their security has been withdrawn. And I mean, we did those stories. So there's a very serious connection of politics and security, hand in hand.
Take us to the break.
Yes, let's go to the break.